Hello everybody, welcome to Career Changers, hosted by CJS. My name is Simon Roper. I'm just doing a little bit of setup just to see. I want to try and do a share screen. So I'm just going to see if that works. Just bear with me a little. And I can see it says that I can't, which is very sad. Okay. Never mind, we have a contingency plan. Right, so I can't share my screen as well as talk to you over on this camera, so never mind, that's okay. If you can hear me, perhaps you could just give me a little thumbs up in the comments, just so I can make sure that's sound is working okay. And we just do, whilst we're doing those sound checks, just before we start. So hopefully things are live. I can see there are some people joining us, which is really great. So if you can hear me, if you don't mind, just sticking something in the comment just to say that you can hear me, so that we can just check that that's all working, then that would be really good before we kind of kick off. Yeah, okay, brilliant. Paul, thank you very much. That's super. Okay, that's good. So go. Brilliant. Okay, so I'm just waiting a couple of minutes for people to join us. That's great. Thank you ever so much for saying you can hear me. That's really super. Brilliant. Fantastic. Good, good, good. Okay. As we kind of start things off, it's now just about midday, which is really great. Excellent. Fantastic. Okay. Very kindly, CJS, Countryside Job Service, asked me to talk about career changes. If you're interested in changing career or indeed just getting into nature conservation, then we're going to have a little bit of a chat about that today, based on experience and stories, which I'll come to in a minute. So just wanted to thank CJS for inviting me along. That's very, very kind. My name is Simon Roper. I'm one of the co-founders of Ambios, which I'll be telling you a little bit more about, not-for-profit Ambios. I've been around in the sector for quite some time now, as you can tell from my grey hair, about 30 odd years or so. And during that time, had the opportunity to talk to many people, both those that are actually employing within the industry over the range of different organisations that there are. I've done, clocked up now, quite a few hundred interviews and quite a few hundred looking at job applications. So I've got a kind of feel of the sector, if you like, and a feel for what's going on. And I'm really, really happy to share that with you today, some of that with you today, and take your questions, which I'll do at the end. So towards the end, yeah, when we get into the Q&A session. I wanted to start off, the way I'd like to run it is I took a little bit about my background and how I come to be here. That will lead us on to perhaps a little bit of talk about Ambios Limited and how that came into existence, because that's a kind of progression of my career. And then I'd like to explore some possibilities around you. I'd like to hear a little bit about what you're doing. And what you're thinking, and also to explore how we might help you discover a future career in nature conservation, or indeed anywhere really, but with a wildlife conservation awareness, I suppose. And then at the end, taking us into a sort of question and answer, an opportunity for you to ask question and answers. What will happen, I guess, is when we stop, in however long it takes, an hour or so's time, a little bit less than an hour's time. This video will then upload to Facebook, obviously. Opportunity to have a look at it again and to leave questions after we've closed the session. And we'll sort of I'll monitor those questions over the next couple of days or so, and quite happy to answer them. If there's things that occur to you, because quite often in the moment you kind of forget, and then you have time to process it. You think a little bit more and you think, oh, I'd like to ask that, and that's fine. So we'll leave that open for the next couple of days or so, and that'd be really good. Today I had planned to kind of try and show you some objects. I was going to do that on a separate camera, but actually I'm going to do it on this camera now for various technical reasons. So look, here is a bird's nest that I rescued when we were clearing out our birds' nests from the garden just recently. And I just wanted to kind of start with this because it's an illustration of how, even though we've all got this tremendous pressure around lockdown at the moment, there are things that we may be able to do that can actually help us increase our knowledge, to investigate, to explore our curiosity around nature conservation. And this is just what one example happens to have come from our bird box, but it could be your neighbour's bird box, or you might have discovered it. You might have discovered it even out in the natural world whilst you're out on an exercising walk. So there are many different ways that you can engage with nature. And as we go through the talk, I'll be sort of sharing a few little illustrations, objects. There's a very good book, wasn't there, recently by a chap from one of the London museums. What was it? In 100 Objects, something or other in 100 Objects. So I thought I'd sort of take a bit of inspiration from that. Talk to you a little bit about camera traps as well, if you want to get involved and close up with nature, perhaps over the Christmas period. Could be a great Christmas present, and a few other things. So anyway, let me start by just giving you a little bit of background about how my journey, how I come to be here, my journey. Now it starts, here's the first object that actually for me, it starts with foxes. Here we go, here's a little fox. When I was about 10 years old, this is my earliest memory of my first sort of nature connection. Was when we came on holiday from South London. I was born in South London, came on holiday down to Somerset somewhere and had a little cottage. And at the back of the cottage there were really, really long grass. Hadn't for some bizarre reason hadn't been mown for ages, so quite tall grass. And right at the bottom of the garden one day appeared this fox, and my dad spotted it from the kitchen window, and he said to me, why don't we go out and see how close we can get to it? And so I think as about 10 years old, I remember crawling through the grass right down low, just seeing the ears poking out from the grass as we got close to it. And we were successful. We got within probably about 3 or 4 meters. But what I do remember is making eye contact with the fox, who looked at me and then just turned away and just melted into the background, just disappeared. My memory is that was my first, if you like, emotional link with nature. And it was actually, I didn't know at the time, but it was to inform what was going to unfold over the next few years. So that was when I was about 10, and I got interested in nature. I landed up, I had a great time doing biology through what was then O level, then into A level. Went to Bristol University to study, went in to study botany, came out as a zoologist, so changed my mind during the journey. And what captured me whilst I was at Bristol was that there were a lot of urban foxes, and there were also, object number 2, there were also a lot of urban badgers. And there was a researcher there who was just starting out, bear in mind this is many years ago, just starting out. Badgers and fox research was in its infancy, and he was following badgers and foxes around the city of Bristol at night using radio collars and aerials to locate where they were, and I volunteered to go and do this. And this gave me more nature connection, if you like, around Bristol City as I was helping out with that project and collecting data. That connected me with badgers, and then of course, because undergraduate, need to do a project. What are you going to do for your project? I discovered that there was a rural badger research facility that was looking at badgers and bovine tuberculosis in Gloucestershire. And it turned out, by a happy coincidence, to be about a 20-30 minute drive from where my parents had relocated from London. Amazingly lucky, I landed up doing my summer project there, and I volunteered, way beyond the hours of doing the summer project, following badgers around the countryside of Gloucestershire, and really getting into that. And that led me, post getting my zoology degree, to wanting to do more research into badgers. Came down to Exeter University, came to Devon and studied badgers again, did a master's by research, following badgers around the Devon countryside using the same techniques that I'd witnessed up in Gloucestershire. So that was my kind of journey into research and nature. And then, of course, you come to the end of the degree, and you think, oh, I need to go into the big wide world now and do some kind of a job. I was lucky enough to be involved with the old Manpower Services Commission, as it was then, which paid you a little bit of extra money if you were signing on. To go and do something for the community, and there was a geography project at Exeter University which was actually digitising the estuaries of Devon, and so I got involved in. I learnt my computer skills, some of my computer skills, by doing digitising of estuaries, in Devon, then that all came to an end. Suddenly the government said no more funding, and they gave all the projects throughout the UK a little pot of money. I think it was about £200 to go and do something to try and help get all these people who are on these schemes and in these projects into employment. And we as a team, there's a team of 4 of us working for the geography department at Exeter. And so we were given the challenge of what would you spend this £200 on, and we decided to organise a public event. We thought if we could invite all the potential employers to a public event so that they could showcase their organisations to the general public, the act of inviting them and us being able to talk to them might mean there was a job out there somewhere. So we organised something called Environment Day on the Cathedral Green, right next to the cathedral in Exeter, and we invited the Wildlife Trust and what was to become the Environment Agency and all sorts of different people. And again, purely by luck, the new director of the Wildlife Trust, Devon Wildlife Trust, newly in post, he saw me rushing around organising this event. And actually, after that event, he said to me, "Are you interested in a part-time job? I can't pay you full-time. Part-time job, doing organising a project for me. I've got an idea," he said. "I've got this idea. I want to build." This is absolutely what he said to me. "I want to build a 12-foot-high model dodo, and I want to put it on a trailer, and I want to take it around to all the schools in Devon, and at each school stop." And we're going to commission a 20-minute piece of theatre for the children. And the title of the play will be Conservation or Extinction. The choice is yours. Bear in mind, this is back in the late 1980s, yeah? And so it was very exciting. So, I said, yeah, absolutely, fantastic, engage with that project. And he said to me, what we'll do is I'll pay you a little bit, and it'll also be a fundraising event. And when and if we make any money, I'll be able to pay you a little bit more, because everything's on a shoestring in nature conservation. So we'll do it in a week. We're going to call it Wildlife Week, and we'll pack a whole load of stuff around it, other events around it. So I thought, well, this is great. So I threw myself into that. Didn't make any money at all. Had a fantastic time. Went to, I can't remember how many schools, but certainly a significant number of schools, something in the region of 30, I think, over the whole week. And engaged with thousands of children with this play that was done by people from the drama department next to university, and had a fantastic time and learnt a lot about logistics, learnt a lot about organisation and about press work. I had a family background. My father was a newspaper journalist many years ago, and so that was really handy. And I landed up working as a press officer and communications officer for Devon Wildlife Trust. That's where it led me. And did that for a few years, finished there a few years later as head of communications, and then moved on to work in consultancy for a little while, so doing little badgers, of course, become a protected species by that time, so you couldn't do anything to a badger set unless you had a license, and they needed people to broker those interactions. So I did a little bit of consultancy work and a little bit of consultancy work for the oil industry, as well, and then thought, actually, what I'm really interested in actually is talking to people about nature, and encouraging people to enjoy nature. And I'd also noticed that, having worked at Devon Wildlife Trust and at the National Wildlife Trust office for a short while, I'd noticed that there were people trying to get jobs in nature conservation who were caught in this loop, didn't have the experience, couldn't get the job, didn't have the job to get the experience, so they were caught in this loop. And I was very intrigued by learning, vocational education, vocational learning, skills learning, as against knowledge and understanding, which comes from higher education, versus skills and practical ability, vocational kind of learning. And these ideas came together, and in 2001 they emerged as Ambios Limited, not-for-profit. And since then, we've been doing all sorts of things to help people get jobs in nature conservation or help them along their chosen careers path, not necessarily into nature conservation. Because actually, it's great if people want to come and work in nature conservation, absolutely lovely. But actually, we need to broaden, as nature conservationists, we need to broaden out into other areas of employment. So we don't mind as an organisation if people come to us, spend some time with us, learn a bit about nature, and then go on to work with in the health and social care sector, in nursing, in medicine, in firefighting, in recycling, in police enforcement, because they're taking that understanding of nature conservation more broadly out to the workforce, which we also consider to be really important. So that's this kind of brief history of sort of coming up to where Ambios exists. So 2001, Ambios exists, and we're accessing European money, and we're accessing Heritage Lottery money, and we are offering to career changers and to people who want to get into nature conservation 9-month placements, fully funded bursary placements, with different nature conservation organisations, so that they can really get those practical skills. And we have, through partnerships, we have lots of individual nature conservation organisations working with us. We're interviewing lots of candidates. We're selecting those organisations selecting the right people for them, and we're going on a 9-month programme, and they're getting a vocational qualification at the end of it. And that then kind of mushroomed a little bit. We were doing it in Devon, and I met a guy who was to become a lifelong friend, a chap called Phil Burton, who at the time worked for Herefordshire Wildlife Trust. And Phil said we could do this in Hereford, and I've got some friends in Sheffield. So we landed up doing it in Sheffield, Hereford and Devon. So it kind of grew, and we received lottery funding for that. That rolled on very successfully. We were having cohorts of 20, 30 people going through, and that was lovely. It was very, very exciting. Sadly, then lottery money, it got more competitive, and we had a really great model. But the problem with some of this, the thing is, you shoot yourself in the foot if you have a good model, because you can't continually innovate because you've got something that's really good. And actually, funders really want you to innovate and bring new things forward. And so actually we lost our funding, sadly, and so we had to look for other alternatives. And at that time, we were lucky enough as Ambios to be offered a tenancy on the Sharpham estate in Totnes in South Devon, and they welcomed us. They're an educational charity involved in promoting nature connection. They welcomed us to site. We'd had a trainee who'd been with us for 9 months. And we'd spotted that there was a possible grant source, and the trainee concerned said, "Can I write a grant bid?" And we said, "Yeah, that's really great. We'll help you to do that." We wrote a grant application, and that grant was successful. This is back now in about 2010, that kind of time. Having been successful, we said to the trainee, "Well, would you like to run it? I mean, you've been involved with writing the bid. You know the project inside out. Would you like to go to Sharpham and run it?" Run the project, and it turned into a 3-year program, very similar to what we'd run in the past. Residential traineeships, people getting vocational qualifications, all about nature conservation, all about wildlife identification, wildlife communication, wildlife surveys, and building up that skills base. And of course, that trainee who ran that project is now my fellow director in Ambios, Jack, and he is permanently down at Lower Sharpham Farm on the Sharpham estate, running that operation for us. As part of what we do. He and I are one of 3 directors, or 2 of 3 directors of Ambios Limited, and we are guiding the organisation now through into a new exciting phase, which is about being given a little bit more land to manage by the Sharpham estate, and rewilding. Rewilding is here, and we're doing it on the estate on behalf of Sharpham, and in connection with one of the projects that they've got, Sharpham Wild for People, funded by the lottery. And again, similar sorts of thing, trainees coming in and working for 12 weeks or 8 weeks with us, getting those skills, And at Sharpen, we have a residential base, so trainees can come, spend their 12 weeks in cohorts, working together, working on wildlife ID, wildlife identification survey, communication, etc., and learning a lot about how the industry works, etc. Those opportunities are all on our website. Some of them are a trainee pay model. Some of them are bursary funded. So if you drop onto the ambios.net website and look for UK training, in the menus there, you'll see those various opportunities. And we not only do we do that, so Jack is responsible for that area down at Sharpen, and he runs the Sharpen operation. I'm actually talking to you from mid-Devon. The Ambios base, official base, is just outside Exeter, Crediton in Devon, and I actually run the project operations and the distance learning. So we also have an offer of distance learning, which again we received grant funding to develop. And the most recent one of those involves this, my next object, which is a camera trap. So this is a camera trap that you can set in your garden, and it has an infrared flash, so it operates at night, and you can capture the wildlife in your garden at night. Our distance learning package involves us loaning you one of these and then working you through how to use it, how to set it up, how to get good results, and you can upload results to our virtual learning environment. We can share and progress your learning on these. So that's another course that we offer, student pay course that we offer. And again, it's on under distance learning on our website. And we're just developing a bird ID one, a similar kind of thing, where we'll be sending an ID book and a sketchpad as well. So the next course for this one, I think, runs next year. So it's a 6-week course. And basically you spend a few hours a week working with this particular piece of kit and becoming a more effective camera trapper. So that's what we called it, effective camera trapping. Effective bird ID will be the next course to roll out. So I'm involved with that. And the last little bit that Ambios gets up to involves Europe and our lovely friends and colleagues in Europe, with whom we've been working for many years. And again, on our website, you can look at EU training, and you can see there's a couple of projects there running. One about Sustainable Development Goals, the UN SDGs, which is coming to a close really soon, and another one that's just starting, which is about what is called wild skills. So again, it's about taking things like camera traps, things like bird identification, and being able to deliver them at a distance, so that trainees can participate in their own environment, but we can help out through the virtual learning environment. The crucial bit, of course, I forgot to mention was that we do live transmissions, a bit like this, once a week to the team that is actually learning together through the 6-week program. So once a week on a Wednesday evening normally, there's a couple of us that come online through Zoom and talk to those participants about the challenges they've been experiencing with their camera trap, how they might think about improving things, and we can have a question and answer session similar to what we're going to do at the end here. So that's part of our I hope innovative delivery, and part of supporting those that want to get jobs in nature conservation. So go quickly to my notes here. So we do European stuff. The European projects tend to be involve mobilities. This is where we bump into COVID-19. There are opportunities to travel with us to our European partners next year. Of course, we have no idea whether they will actually be possible because of COVID-19. But in the past, up until COVID, we were able to offer funded trips, short trips, groups of us going for a few days, 4 or 5 days, to our partners in Hungary or Portugal or Poland, or Norway, or Spain, and just to work with those organisations and just an exchange of information and a development of project ideas, and distance learning, other things. So you can explore that on the website, go and explore it on the website. The caveat being, by all means register your interest, because then we can keep you posted. We just don't know how those projects are going to be affected by COVID-19 next year. And indeed, one of the things that we had to do exceedingly rapidly in March of this year was to postpone all our mobilities that were due to go this year. So that COVID had a major impact on our operations for that time. We're very grateful to the Heritage Emergency Fund for helping us to get through that period, because it was quite a tough time. So anyway, we do European stuff, we do UK stuff, and you know, that's more about what we do. The crucial thing, the thing that underpins everything that we do, is nature conservation training. It's mentioned on the T-shirt, on the back of the T-shirt, and on the back of the sweatshirt as well. But I can't show you that because that'll upset the cameras. So you know, this is what we do. This is what we're involved with. So really, really important. It comes back to that every single time that we do a project or think about what we're going to do. Okay, so I've done a little bit about me and a little bit about Ambios Limited. Now I want to just explore a little bit about you, and just to think a little bit about where you're at and how you might move towards some kind of job or career in nature conservation. Now, the first thing to say is that nature conservation is a very, very broad church. Yeah, there are lots and lots of different jobs to do in nature conservation, and if you're changing career, you're as welcome as anybody else. What you're bringing, if you're changing career, is you are actually bringing a very different history, personal story into nature conservation, and actually that is you know, just as appropriate, just as valid, just as exciting as those who perhaps have come through what you might call a more classical route. So, you know, like myself, you know, I did a degree in zoology and masters in research, you know, and then came into nature conservation that way. But my first job was actually press officer, you know, and then eventually head of communications, and then eventually going freelance. So, you know, there are, don't be worried. Don't think that there's you'll never be able to do it, because that's not the case. Jack, who runs our farm, my fellow director, did a degree in hospitality management. And a master's in environmental sustainability. So again, different route for him. Michael, who's one of our team, who's based up in Leicester, I was talking to him yesterday, and of course he reminded me he did a degree in history, and then went on to study politics and international relations. And Michael's about the same age as me, so we've been involved in conservation for quite a few years. We met almost 30 years ago. Michael's now freelance, but he finished his sort of formal employment career as the chief executive of the Wildlife Trust nationally. So again, you know, an illustration that you can come from any background and you know, find your place in nature conservation. And there are lots and lots of different jobs to choose from. And one of the big challenges, I think, is for you to decide what you would like to do. Because if you start with the classic nature conservation role, which would be a conservation officer or countryside ranger, if you start with that at the centre of your thinking, just for now, there are an enormous number of jobs around that go off in different directions like a spider diagram. So we can think of education officers, we can think of media relations, social media, we can think of human resource folks, we can think of finance, policy, legal, we can think about conservation staff, we can think about senior leadership teams, we can think about volunteer coordination and volunteer leadership, as well as all the practical, if you like, cutting down trees, planting trees, putting in hedges, putting in gates and stiles. So there's a real diversity of jobs, and there's also a diversity of organisations. So we can think about wildlife trusts, national parks, areas of outstanding natural beauty. We can think about the civil service, the charitable sector and the private sector. Lots and lots and lots. And if you have a look on the CJS, you know, website, you will see that, you know, there is this diversity of jobs. I think that then the question is, okay, how do you decide? That's a tough call, isn't it? You know, how do you decide what you want to do? And this is partly, I think, both an outward journey of discovery and an inward journey. What would you really like to do? It's a little bit to do with self-discovery, and you thinking about the kinds of things that you would really like to do. What's your thing? You know, my thing is badgers. Yeah. Where's my other friend? Here it is. Badgers have followed me kind of all around in my career, and we now run a bovine tuberculosis vaccination program for badgers at Sharpham, so I'm still very much involved with them, and they've become my thing. And the question is, what's your thing? What would you like to do? Having a thing is really great, regardless of whether your job lands up actually working with the thing. So if you're interested in trees or leaves or insects or beetles or butterflies, or the list is endless, it's a really nice way of grounding your thinking, and giving you also something that you can pursue, investigate, show the skills, show the curiosity that will help you in an interview situation, job application situation. I discovered during first lockdown that I didn't know this prior to lockdown. There are 250 different species of dandelion. That was a revelation. I assumed that it was all one or two species, if I'd given it any thought at all. But I discovered during lockdown there are 250 species. This is done by my daughter, done by my daughter for me, which is lovely. And it's an example of how exercising your curiosity can actually lead you to discover your thing. And your thing, as you work with that over time, actually starts to feed into experiences you can draw on that might be useful at application or interview stage. So thinking about my experiences with badgers over the years, many and varied, thinking about a job interview situation where I might be asked, have you ever had to deal with a situation of conflict? Now, badgers are, one of those animals that a bit Marmite, yeah. There are people that love them and people that don't like them, and I've had to deal with coming across farmers, sometimes late at night, with loaded shotguns. And so I had to deal with the odd conflict situation, all resolved perfectly fine. But it's an example of how getting involved with your thing then begins to lead on to stories that you can tell in interview. So we recommend doing that. Doesn't matter what your thing is, that'll be up to you. And I think this is the other thing about then the inward journey. What would you really like to do, and what would you really like to explore? Now, lockdown and COVID has given us perhaps a little bit of opportunity to think about this quietly, in our own bubbles. And actually can be a really useful thing. So we can actually see that this time is a really good time for you to explore what you would like to do, the kinds of jobs you would like to do, and you can research that on websites. And personally, what you would like to engage with. So a lot of the people I've met over the years working in different areas of different organisational areas, be it human resources or finance or social media, they have a thing, they have an interest in birds, or they have an interest in beetles or whatever, yeah. And I think that's a really useful thing, and particularly if you're a career changer or thinking about changing a career. So just one little thing before I just start to ask you about questions, is about the inner journeys. There's a couple of things around that I'd like to share with you. At Ambios, we are really, really keen on a concept called the growth mindset. I'm going to hold this up to the camera so you can see. Okay, there we go. A growth mindset behaviour, the power of yet. Now, what that means is that if I don't know all the dandelions, I'm saying to myself, I don't know all the dandelions yet, okay? To go from not knowing what one species of dandelion is to knowing 250 is a massive jump. So I need to be really realistic for myself in terms of my expectations of what I can achieve between now and, say, Christmas. And we're great believers in Ambios of thinking, well, let's keep our expectations really realistic, given everything else that we have to do in the world that are away from dandelions. If I could know 3 species of dandelion by Christmas, that's probably a realistic thing. And I don't know the others, but I don't know the others yet. So I'm thinking about a growth mindset approach, a positive approach that's going to encourage me to be successful in that particular endeavor. Growth Mindset, here's another little book for you, Growth Mindset Pocketbook by a couple of guys there, Heimer and Garshan. Really great little book about growth mindset. It's an idea, a concept worked on by a psychologist called Carol Dweck, working out at Stanford University. And it's just about giving us a little sort of time check, a little hang on a minute moment when we're feeling a little bit overwhelmed and thinking, oh, I'm not sure whether that's going to be possible. I'm not sure whether I can do that. Or the next stage on where I'm beginning to get perhaps a little bit depressed about the situation. It's a chance to say, oh, hang on a minute. Let's just think about this in terms of little steps. What little steps can I do? Here are all these dandelions, 250 species. What little step could I do that's achievable that will start me on that road? I don't know the 250 species yet. I don't actually know the 3 yet. But by Christmas, I could realistically perhaps learn the 3. Interestingly, just going back to dandelions, point of information. Apparently, it's all to do with the shapes of the leaves. So I'm told. So again, I have to need to investigate it. So in Ambios, we talk quite a lot about growth mindset. We talk about that with our trainees because we believe that the learning experience should be achievable and positive and supported. So we don't actually believe or talk about criticism. We are actually more about posing questions and asking questions that lead people to think about what they might do differently. So as an example, when we're doing our training on job applications or how to respond to interview questions, our responses to that are designed to make people think how they might do things differently. We don't set ourselves up to be the experts. We're not saying do it this way, and we're also not critical. Okay, and it's really important as an organisation. We believe this to be really important. The language we use is supportive and encourages the individual, the individual or the learner, to actually make steps along that learning journey themselves in a positive and supportive way. And actually, we use something called Claxton's 4 R's. There's a guy called Guy Claxton who came up with the idea that no matter what learning environment I'm in, if I am resilient, if I am reflective, if I'm resourceful, and if I use reciprocity, the idea of communication, two-way communication, then actually I can tackle anything. Okay? It's not so much about the subject content. It's actually about being resilient and resourceful and being reciprocal in our discussions and being reflective. Really, really important. And under the word resilient, which splits down into things like absorbing information and managing distractions, being focused, and persevering, is something called noticing. And noticing is actually what we in nature conservation, you in nature conservation, do all the time, or will do all the time. We notice things. We notice the leaves are changing. We notice the leaves are falling. We notice the buds in spring. We notice the smell of the rain. We hear the rain. I heard it earlier beating down on the roof. Actually, noticing is something that's really integral to nature conservation. So I would encourage you to look up Claxton's 4 R's and to use those also, to challenge yourself to use those in your thinking about what to do next. And finally, here's another one that we give our trainees. Can you see that? Good old Kung Fu Panda. Kung Fu Panda. I was talking about the journey being outward and the journey being inward. And Kung Fu Panda 2 talks about something called Qi. Yeah, Chinese Eastern philosophy of Qi. The idea of inner self, of inner strength. If you haven't seen Kung Fu Panda 2, go and have a look. If you have seen it and can't remember, go and have another look. It's really interesting in terms of a journey to discover what you want to do. It's part of discovering who you are, what you'd like to do, and where you want to put your future. So slight digression, but again, something we share with our other trainees, because we are, as well as a nature conservation training organisation, we are a personal development organisation. And I think actually that most training establishments, if not all, are really personal development organisations, as well as training or learning, be that in school, through the school system, be that into university, be that in college, FE college, be that in higher education, and beyond into PhDs and masters, whatever. So again, that's something that it all wraps around into this bubble for how do you move your career. So we're very fortunate, aren't we, that we all have our favourite search engines, and they are a really good place to start when you're thinking about what kind of jobs you'd like to do. So you have Countryside Job Service at your disposal, you have your favourite search engine to stick in those words to discover what's out there. And if you are coming to this for the first time, then there's a great challenge that I would put to you that you can explore. Every area of work has its own particular language, doesn't it? It has its own, it has its own speak, yeah? And exploring that speak using your favourite search engine, researching that kind of thing is really interesting. So I'm going to give you some letters, okay? The sequence of letters, just to see, just think to yourself, do I know what this is? And if you don't, that's fine, because you can use your favourite search engine later to go and research it. And this will be part of a journey to discover what nature conservation is all about, how it works, what the networks are, and what the organisations are. So if I said to you, please don't answer this in the chat, okay, if I said to you SSSI, what's an SSSI, could you tell me? And if you can't, that's fine, something to research later. If I said to you SAC, what does that mean? If I said to you WWF, okay, I'm going to give you that. Worldwide Fund for Nature, as it now is. Okay, used to be the World Wildlife Fund. NT, AOMB, WT with a small s. Others written down here. NNR is another one. AOMB I've already mentioned. RSPB, okay, we may know that. That's good. BTO. So it's a little game, a little quiz, and it's just a little bit about finding out where your knowledge is, and also using your favourite search engine, what do those things actually mean? And getting those names right, whatever those organisations are, or places, or descriptions are, is really important, because you have to remember that if you're called Mary Smith, and I get your name wrong, it's slightly odd, isn't it? So when you're researching, think about trying to remember what those names are with some degree of accuracy, because that is important to the people who work there and to perhaps the people that establish them or whatever. So it's important to know what these words are to some degree of accuracy. It might be useful to you in an interview or whatever. What it does is it opens up an understanding for you of the network and how it works together. And actually, we could go on. I've got listed here somewhere. I had to kind of think about them. The more I think about them, the more come to mind. So there's BCT is another one. There you go. DEFRA, you may have heard of. NEHE. Then normally there's a county followed by BRC. So Devon, BRC, DBRC, but it might be SERC for Somerset. What does that mean? LA. NRW. Okay, I'm going to stop there. So if you great, use your favourite search engine, explore those possibilities, see what you can find. Use the CJS website to look at jobs, to drill into those jobs to see what is needed, what kind of skills they're after, what's essential and what's desirable. And when you're reading the essential skills, think about what your experience is so far. And if it feels a bit overwhelming, but you're really interested in doing that job, then my question would be, what are the little steps that you could do that would allow you actually at some point in the future to be able to say, okay, I've got that essential skill. So if it's about, let's say it's RSPB and they're asking about birds and they want a bird warden, and the essential skill is, got to be familiar with UK birds. Okay, I'm not that familiar with that UK birds, but the question I would ask myself is what are the first little steps? How can I become more familiar with UK birds? And I would realise that there's going to be a journey there, and that journey is going to take me time. So that's my ideal job. So I need to think about what I can do in the meantime that will build towards that ideal job. To think about our careers as a river that flows down a valley. Okay, and sometimes the water needs to go around rocks that are presented. Sometimes we're going down in the open countryside, and the sun's shining and everything as well. Sometimes the weather's a bit rough. Sometimes our career goes a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right as it meanders down the valley. Sometimes it goes into some woodlands, which are quite dark, and then it comes out, into the sunshine again and moves down. So our career is doing this all the time, yeah. And I think the days have gone where people work for the same organisation for 40 years. It's increasingly rare now, and particularly in nature conservation, there are opportunities to move within organisations, build on experiences, and move forward. So lots of stuff to take on board there. Sorry about that. Coming at you. Listen to the recording later, perhaps to mull stuff over. If you have any questions and you'd like to put them in the chat, be delighted to answer those. But if they occur to you slightly later after the recording's gone up, then by all means put them on the CGS webpage, Facebook page, and we'll try and answer them best we can. Okay, so I'm just going to look here, and somebody's saying options. Yeah, okay. So CJS, really great website looking for opportunities. Somebody's saying there's loads of opportunities. There are. I guess that's another interesting observation, actually. So we're at a stage where our reality now is that we've got this trouble with COVID-19. So just to let you know that what's happening in the funding arena. So this is things like the lottery, big lottery, heritage lottery, other funders. They have moved quite quickly to support organisations that are involved in training, and they come out and they've said apply to us for some money. So we've all done that, and I don't know how many there are nationally, but there'll be hundreds. Some of them will be successful. Some of those projects will be successful, and they'll be successful quite soon. I think the release dates, the success or otherwise date is coming up pretty soon in November. Once those projects start going into December, they will start to advertise opportunities, and these could be bursary placements. They may be apprenticeship type systems. They may be residential training programs. They may be supported jobs. There will be a flush coming through, so you need to watch CJS and watch social media, because there will be those opportunities, and some of them will be possibly specifically targeted at career changes. Others will be in nature conservation, and there'll be all sorts of different nature conservation opportunities. So, one of the things that's come out of COVID is that there will be this lottery money flushing through the organisations that will eventually present you with opportunities in the not too distant future. Some of those projects may start the next calendar year, some of them next financial year, so either January or April next year. But you need to be, it's good to be aware of that, so you can keep looking. Keep looking at the Wildlife Trust Network, the County Wildlife Trust Network, because they will have no doubt gone for it, various different kinds, and indeed a plethora of other organisations, including ourselves. We're waiting to hear. So there may well be opportunities appearing on our social media or on our website, or indeed advertised through CGS in the coming months. Somebody's going to get that money because it's I can't remember how many million quid that they're going to dole out. We've all asked for little bits. Some will be successful, some will be unsuccessful, but the successful ones, will eventually filter through, and the opportunities will be there. So do look out for that. That is a positive thing, and a lot of it will be entry level or changing direction type stuff. So that's a good thing. Keep monitoring. Okay, let me just have a quick look. Okay, here we go. Options of volunteering. Yes, okay. Yeah. Okay, so this is a really good point. Thank you, Emma. So it's hard to get practical experience necessary for land management jobs. Yeah, reading up on techniques and conservation manuals. Excellent. Okay. Anything else you can do while physical volunteering is out? Yes. Okay. So really, really great question. Thanks ever so much, Emma. That's super. So I think it goes back to what you can do. The practical conservation side is hard, isn't it? So if we're thinking about kissing gates, and we're thinking about fences, and we're thinking about that kind of hard landscaping, putting in what's the word I'm after? Steps. Putting in steps. That's hard to do because that kind of volunteering is closed down. Unless you have any friends or relatives that happen to want that kind of stuff in their gardens, and you might be able to volunteer to do it for them, then as long as that doesn't breach any social distancing guidelines, then it's a good thing to do. But what I would suggest is, if that practical stuff is actually quite difficult to handle at the moment, then think about the other skills and other learning that sort of wraps around that. And this is where things like looking for birds' nests, looking what's in the bird's nest. Yeah. We think, I haven't had a chance to go into it in any detail yet, but we think probably we've got our dog hair. We have 2 Labradors, so we've probably got dog hair in here. There may well be badger hair in here, which is quite distinctive. You can look it up on your favourite search engine to be able to distinguish it. You can see some bird poo here. Look, see that white bird poo. And feathers and moss, etc. So investigating these kinds of things. Another thing you can go and do, plaster of Paris, going looking for footprints. Here's a lovely pussycat from next door, look. Yeah. And again, it helps you, that exercise, going out with some plaster of Paris, making a little cardboard round, pouring in the plaster of Paris, very exciting thing to do. But as well as that, it starts to introduce you to what does a cat print look like, versus, here's one I haven't had a chance to colour up yet. This is actually a deer print. This is actually roe deer. I'm not sure if you can see. There you go, roe deer. Yeah, so roe deer print. I'm searching for badger. I need a fresh badger one because they're all down at Sharpham at the moment, my badger ones. You can see what they look like when they come out of the mud. It doesn't have to be, beautifully round. You can see there, that's another roe deer print. And you can see it's quite thick plaster of Paris there. This is my sort of, this beautiful one, beautifully round. It's a recycled Pringles carton, I think, that we use for it. This kind of thing helps you to progress your both your skills because this is potentially, if you're applying for a job in education or public engagement, this is a public engagement tool. This is something you can do with children or indeed with families, at a nature conservation site. So actually practicing this is really great for your CV potentially. What was I going on to say? Okay, the other thing was this. So Christmas is coming up. If the family are not sure what to get you, a camera trap like this, which you can see. Unfortunately, our dog chewed the thing. It doesn't close properly because we had a puppy Labrador, and he chewed the end of this, so it doesn't. This is why it's a demonstration one. But these kind of things are approximately £180. It's not that cheap, but they are getting cheaper and cheaper. We work with a not-for-profit called Nature Spy. And James there can advise you if you give him a ring. He's full of information about camera traps. And again, this is a way of capturing images at night and during the day onto an SD card. That comes out and goes in your laptop or onto your computer, and you can see what you've got. It does video as well as stills. And again, it just helps you to begin to get your eye in to identify some of those birds and mammals and potentially inverts that you can capture within your garden. So what I would suggest, Emma, is that what you're doing is great, and you're working on those practical manuals and you're thinking about that, and you can perhaps nudge over into some of the natural history stuff, if you like, around that. I don't know what kind of background you've done already. You may be up to speed on that kind of stuff, but it's about extending your knowledge a little bit. I think one of the key questions that we can probably put a really good bet on is that when we come out of COVID-19 and people are interviewing, one of the questions I would suggest that's going to pop up is what did you do to further your career in nature conservation during lockdown? So you need to be ready for that. And these kind of things can help, okay? That kind of thing, that kind of thing. Your manual, reading of manuals, great. That's the kind of thing you need to be ready to describe. Another quick point on this. Although you might not have had the chance to build the fence, you've read the manual maybe, you haven't had a chance to build the fence, don't worry too much about that. In your application and in your interview, just be really honest about the experience that you've had. And it's the same with camera trapping, So people will see all too often written in applications, I have experience of the following. And you might say camera trapping. I've done camera trapping for so and so. What it's not telling me, as somebody reading the application, is when you did it, how long you did it for, and what results you got, and what you learnt from it. Okay, so better to think about saying things like, I did 2 weeks of intensive camera trapping and analysed 3,500 photos until I found the one of the otter that we were looking for. Do you see what I mean? Being really specific about the experience that you had. Because as an employer, I can build on your experience, whatever it is, even if you don't have any, and I've got a training budget. But I need you to describe clearly what experience you have. So a lot of people say that they can use Microsoft tools, Microsoft Suite. Doesn't tell me actually whether they can word process, whether they can mail merge, whether they can use Excel and link sheets together, whether they can use formulas, that kind of thing. It's just another example of think about being specific. Think about being specific in your job applications and in your interviews. If you'd like to know a lot more detail about applications and about where to find applications, how to apply, and about interviews, top tips for interviews, all that kind of stuff, Ambios will be rolling out a series of webinars in future weeks. So keep an eye on the website, keep an eye on social media. We're going to address that because we're conscious that because we have lockdown 2, we're aware that some people will be focusing on that a little bit more. So if you'd like to know more detail about that, we're doing that in small group sessions via the Ambios site. Okay, any other questions, folks? That's okay. Always happy to talk about stuff and ideas and exchange ideas, exchange experiences. If there's anybody out there who is a career changer, who is coming from a particularly unusual career or whatever, and you want to mention that in the chat, that would be really interesting. I think I said in the initial sort of narrative for this session that we work with people. As a lovely guy who did a degree in fine art, specialising in sculpture at London University, who came to us as initially on the programme that Jack ran, the first programme that he ran I was talking about earlier down at Lower Sharpen Farm. And he got into photography and video and stills, produced a whole load of beautiful images for us, landed up designing the Ambios logo, designing these t-shirts you can see behind me, and the logo on our sweatshirts. He's now moved on to work in the film industry in Canada, but had a real design flair. So that's somebody who's come from a very, very different background, but just wanted to get into nature conservation and know more about it. But then eventually, the artist in him took hold and took him off to Canada to get involved in arts films over there, which is fantastic. Brilliant. Okay, I'm conscious of time, folks, so I'm going to bring things to a close. Thank you ever so much for listening. Thank you once again, CJS, for having us. It's been an absolute delight. If there are any other questions, website, contact me via the CJS webpage or via the Ambios, the CJS webpage and Facebook page, and watch us on social media. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We're around and about and helping people and running residential programs at the farm, which are booking up fast. So I suggest you go and have a look at those if you're interested. All the distant learning modules, and you can find us through your favourite search engine, and we're always happy to answer specific questions if you want to drop us an email. happy to do that. In the meantime, I'll leave you to lunchtime. Thank you ever so much, folks. Have a good day. And enjoy the rest of your day. And I think lastly, okay, we're heading into lockdown number 2. Let's look for the opportunities within that. Let's look at what we can do for ourselves and nature, so that when we come through this, because it's going to be a bit stormy for a while, but storms pass, and inevitably it will pass. When we come into the calmer landscape, then I wish you very well in pursuing your career in nature conservation or wherever it may be. Okay, thank you ever so much, folks. We'll upload the recording now to Facebook, and any other questions, then by all means just drop them into the chat. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for listening. Bye.